Welcome, folks, to our third webinar in our West Virginia Historic Preservation virtual conference series. I'm Danielle Parker. I'm the director for the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia, and I appreciate everyone joining us this afternoon. Our presenter today will be cemetery conservator Joni Morris, and she will be presenting on the topic Welcome to Neglect to Network, Why Community Engagement is Key to Cemetery Preservation and Support. So I will be passing it over to Joni here, but if you have questions, we generally hold those to the end, or you can put them in the chat at any time or raise your hand, so I can monitor the chat and read those questions out, Joni.
Okay.
So go ahead, Joni, take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am so glad that you're here today for this. I am excited that we are on being able to do this as a webinar because I think that it has a lot of good information in it. And for people that are trying to support small town cemeteries and things that a lot of people don't usually think about. So let's go ahead and get started. Um, this cemetery that I'm standing in this at the beginning of this. This was Mount Calvary Cemetery in Ripley. Um, and this was the very first cemetery that I ever did a preservation workshop in. And my husband and I actually spent 3 to 4 days along with Jamie, um, um, who used to be with PAWV. Um, we all cleaned this cemetery up, and it had not been touched probably in 5 or 6 years. The church that used to be there had burned down, and it was the closest thing to Cedar Lakes Conference Center that we could use for a workshop. And so, go ahead, Danielle. Um, so these are some of the pictures of what it looked like beforehand. This was a fairly large cemetery. Um, and throughout uncovering it, we uncovered over 150 gravestones in this cemetery. And in toward the end of the presentation, I'll tell you why this cemetery is being shown in this particular presentation and why it was so significant. Okay, go ahead. You can go on to the next one. All right, engaging your cemetery in your uh, local, engaging your community in your local cemetery. What are two of the reasons that we do this? Um, Number one, we want to reclaim our sacred spaces. And two, we also want to engage your community in preserving our local cemeteries. So, what is our ultimate goal in doing all of this? Is that we want to transform our cemeteries, whether they're small or whether they're large, whether they have 20 or 25 stones in them, or whether they have 25 or 25,000 stones in them. We want to transform them from forgotten spaces into active cultural hubs, and we want to connect our past generations to our current generations and the generations that are living within the communities now. Um, and as we go through this presentation, um, you'll start to understand why that connection to our current generation and connecting them with their past is so very vital and important to saving our local cemeteries. Go ahead. All right. Why engagement matters. Number one is obviously preservation. Um, Number two, um, And in order for preservation to happen, active spaces secure public funding and also engage volunteers. If the space is not active, it's more difficult to get preservation to happen. Education, gravestones, a lot of people don't realize is gravestones offer tangible, hyper local, meaning it's very local to their schools and their communities, geology, history, English, and math lessons right there in the graveyards and in the cemeteries. You often think of, yes, they provide history lessons, but how do they provide geology, English, and math lessons? Well, we'll get into that later in the presentation. Green space. Yes, our cemeteries provide green space, especially in our rural cemeteries. During the rural cemetery movement back in the 1800s, our cemeteries, they started moving them outside of the cities, and a lot of times that was their only green space. That was the only place that they could go where there wasn't, buildings or pollution from factories or industrial space. So urban cemeteries provide a vital natural sanctuary for those living in cities or towns. Also, wellness. Cemeteries, you think of a lot of people think of cemeteries as being spooky places. But cemeteries are also very peaceful. They offer quiet areas for reflection. Okay. Go on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to get into some of the ways that you can use your cemetery space to engage your community in educational events and tours. So far, does anybody have any questions?
I haven't seen any come through in the chat yet, but
Okay.
if folks do, raise your hand or we can take breaks.
Okay. All right. Educational events and tours. Okay. How many of you have been to some sort of living history talk or maybe a historical talk in a cemetery? You can just put it in the chat. Okay. Okay, a couple people. Historical tours are something that you don't think of being able to do historical tours in small cemeteries with only maybe 25 people or 25 stones or even 10 stones. But if you put several cemeteries together that only have 10 or 15 or maybe even 5 stones, you can actually do a historical tour through those smaller cemeteries and do it as either a walking tour if they're close together, or even as a driving tour where you go to each cemetery and there's maybe 1 or 2 people in those cemeteries that are highlighted at each stop. If you have a larger cemetery, you can do guided walking tours that highlight, prominent local figures, veterans, or maybe others in the cemetery that have unique stories about them, or even maybe just people in the community that were minors or people that made some contribution to the community as just a regular person. And those are those can be very interesting because it highlights everyday folks in the cemetery. Living history. Um, these can be a way to get students, young people from your local high school or your local, if you have a community college, to portray citizens at those folks' grave sites in historic garb, doing a living history talk. They basically portray those folks um, in time period garb from when they were alive and basically tell their story as them. Um, these can be a lot of fun for the students, and it also gives them a chance to do some research on that person. You even can work with a history teacher or an English teacher to have these students write up a small paper about the person that they're researching. Night walks. You host flashlight tours focused on local folklore. Um, you know, some cemeteries or some communities may not be up for this, but a lot of times, especially during the month of October, um, these are fun things to do. Um, and school field trips, definitely. Um, you can, one of the things is you can align gravestone symbol searches. Kids can do a scavenger hunt. Tell them, you know, things like, can you find a gravestone with a rose on it? Can you find a gravestone with a Mason symbol on it? And then explain what these different symbols are. So they're getting some history, as well as having a scavenger hunt. And you can even have them find people specific graves, and give a little bit of history about those individual folks. Um, and this is also a great time to have students. This is where the geology and the English and the math can come into play. You can give students a ruler, ask them to find a stone that is 7 inches thick. Ask them to find a stone that's 3 inches thick. Ask them to find a stone that is, 37 inches wide, or give them, guidelines, ask them to find a marble stone, a granite stone, if you have them, a slate stone and a sandstone stone in your cemetery. Um, these are all ways that they can learn different things while walking through a cemetery. Does anybody have any questions so far? Or comments? All right, great. I see we added some more folks here. Welcome. Okay. Hands-on workshops. Okay. Another poll in the chat. Um, yep. Okay, hands-on workshops. I want to see how many of you I'm going to be stingy here. How many of you all have attended one of my gravestone workshops through either PWV directly or a conference? Um, okay, great. Um, well, I look forward to seeing some of you that haven't had the chance to attend. Um, I'll do a plug here. This year, we'll hopefully be doing two workshops sometime this fall through PAWV. So keep an eye out for those. Um, hands-on workshops. Obviously, you can do in your cemetery, you can get together stone cleaning. And if you have someone in your community that is familiar with the do no harm methods, you can teach a safe, non-destructive workshop that teaches the D2 biological solution cleaning methods that are safe for your stones. You can also do hands-on things like grave plot gardening, where you invite volunteers to plant native perennial flowers. You can also get together with your local garden clubs, like your Master Gardeners Club, and you can work on maybe doing local, pollinator gardens in your cemetery. Um, you have to be careful with what flowers you plant near your tombstones, just because you don't want to upset your stones. You could also do data mapping. You can run a workshop, and this is great for young people, high school age, middle school age, young adults in college. You can run a workshop using smartphone apps to teach digital documentation using GPS and taking photos um, of your gravestones to plot where they're at. Um, this is great for young people because they love using their phones. Um, you can also let families sponsor and maintain neglected historical graves. If you have a small cemetery, like that only has 5 gravestones in it, you can maybe let a family adopt 1 or 2 graves out of that cemetery, and have just a few families working in that cemetery. But it's, adopt the plot. So if you have, 20 graves and you have a family, each family adopt 2 graves, then you've pretty much, your help, those families are helping you take care of your small cemetery. It's great, and it's great for something the families get involved in that have kids. Um, it teaches good work ethics, and it also teaches them history, especially if they have family members in that cemetery. And last, your gravestone preservation, um, teaching hands-on workshops. You run a workshop that teaches the Secretary of the Interior standards of do no harm and teach basic hands-on preservation techniques, such as leveling, resetting, and basic repair of gravestones. If you want to do something like that, definitely get a hold of PAWV, because those are things that they can they can help you get a hold of somebody to organize. Okay, we can. Anybody have any questions, comments? All right. A lot of people don't think of cemeteries as a place for cultural and arts activation. Um, this is something that is becoming a new thing, especially in the larger cemeteries. Um, they have done, you can get community arts groups to, or even to sponsor photography contests, and you can actually encourage, you know, novice photographers or even professional photographers to come out and take pictures of your cemetery during different seasons. And then, you know, the following season, have a photography contest, that have one group that's novice and one group that's professional, and um, let them show the beauty of your cemetery. And that's another advantage to this, is if you're going to do any marketing for your cemetery, you can ask to use these photos in your marketing. Okay, concerts. And I'm not talking about, like the concerts that they have at amphitheaters and things like that. I'm talking about acoustical music and or poetry readings, like in the chapel, if there's a chapel on site, or in any kind of an open area where people can spread blankets and just sit and listen. Um, it's an idea that some people might be opposed to, but um, a lot of people think that it's a good thing because it gets people um, to where they are accustomed to using the cemetery as a place to come and enjoy being with our ancestors, and not just as a place that it's not just a place that you go to bury dead people, basically. Um, Cinema nights, as I said, these are new things. Our grandparents may have thought that these are very weird things, but some cemeteries now actually do they show classic films or historic documentaries in their cemeteries. They have outdoor films during the summer. Another thing is art classes, organizing open air painting sessions. If you have a local artist that does things like the paint and sips, or things like that, you could talk to them about having a small group, like maybe 8 people, come, and where they have easels and can set up um, an open air art class, in the summertime or in the spring or fall. And, maybe do paintings that have a scene from your cemetery in it. Different things like that. So these are just ideas. And I'm sure there's many more, but these are just some of the things that I have known other cemeteries to do. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I'm open. Please feel free to unmute yourself. And
Think there are a lot of cool things that you could find in the cemetery to be as like a backdrop or a setting
yes,
for a painting.
yes. Mausoleums are great. especially the large mausoleums with the stained glass. Even the small ones, some of the stonework and the carvings on them are absolutely tremendous. And even some of the old stones are absolutely just, you know, they're unreal. You don't see artwork because it's art. I mean, these are people that stone carvers are artists and artisans, and a lot of people don't think of carving a gravestone as somebody that carves a gravestone as an artisan, but they are. Especially the old ones that were hand carved. So, yeah, definitely. All right. Another thing is, and this is something that I know many cemeteries have, and this is more along the lines of more you see now. You see a lot of people, especially in the bigger cemeteries, walking, um, or walking their dog. And just make sure if you're going to open your cemetery up to dog walkers, that you put signs up, to make sure that folks, and even, maybe get a small grant to put up, some trash bins along the way, for people to dispose of waste, from their puppies, um, because you want to keep your cemetery clean. Bird watching is a great thing for in cemetery, especially if you have trees and, um, if you are working with the master gardeners and you have different, different plants and things in your cemetery. You can definitely partner with a local Audubon society for morning walks through your cemetery, or even a local naturalist club is great. Um, Tree trails. And this is even if you have a small, like 1 acre cemetery that has some old growth trees on it. Don't be afraid to, you know, get a hold of your local, like your, what like would be West Virginia, Department of Natural Resources. A lot of times they'll have somebody come out and they can verify what kind of trees you have, and then you can actually label your trees and, put out a little pamphlet of your trees that you have, because some of our older cemeteries have some beautiful old growth trees, and, it's something really cool, especially for our students that, come to your cemetery. Um, Yoga and walking. Um, this is something that doesn't take any money. Um, you can definitely promote walking in your cemetery. And, if you have a local yoga group, um, you know, they can use, if you have paved cemetery paths, but even if you don't, if you have a nice grassy area, a lot of small yoga groups will even use that. So, that's a great thing. Um, and don't forget, community cleanups. You would be surprised at if you advertise it well in advance, um, and do it usually on a Saturday or even in the evening. Um, a lot of people will show up, if you give them enough notice. Um, you can schedule seasonal leaf rakings and debris clearing days. Um, and a lot of cemeteries schedule these, especially before important holidays like Memorial Day, 4th of July. Veterans Day especially, um, and Christmas. But usually a lot of times we have snow. Um, but even so, around the first of the year, if people come and put flowers or whatnot, around the first of the year, um, toward February, a lot of times cemeteries will want to go through and clean up all of this so that it doesn't get scattered throughout the cemetery. And that's the same with like Memorial Day. Um, Usually, a week or two after the holiday, it's good to schedule a community cleanup to pick up old flowers and things like that. And if you are in charge of a cemetery, you always want to make sure to let people know, have a sign up that says, even if it's one that you've just printed off and used like a laminator on, that, please remove all uh, flowers that are not natural, within a certain amount of time, so you can keep your cemeteries looking nice. Any questions so far? I got a quiet group.
Yeah, the webinars are always a lot quieter, I think, than when we're together in person. So, folks, feel free to chime in if you like to.
Yes, please do. That's the one thing I don't like about webinars is they're too quiet. All
Yes,
right.
sometimes you feel like it's like, is anyone there? So, understand.
All right. I'm good. I'm good with time. All right. Marketing and outreach strategies. Um, Digital footprints. You can, there are more than one ways to create maps. Um, I am going to find out here. How many of you are familiar with Find a Grave or Billion Graves? You can give me a thumbs up or you can put it in the chat. Okay. We got two. All right. Cool. All right. So you guys are a little bit familiar with these. Let's see. And Tom, I think you've been to one of my workshops, have you not? You can unmute yourself. Um,
Am I unmuted?
yeah, you're unmuted.
Yes, I've been to three of your workshops last
Okay.
summer.
I thought I recognized your name. Well, thank you for attending. Um,
I'm new to Zoom, so I don't know what I'm doing here.
yep,
Uh,
I got you. All right. All right. So the digital footprints, there is several ways you can do that. You can use Find a Grave, Billion Graves. There's also, um, help me out here, Danielle. It's the one that Katie worked on.
She worked when we did the veterans.
It it starts with a
Oh,
C.
the
Clio.
Clio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Clio. I can never remember the name of that for some
Yes,
reason.
the Clio. You have to search because sometimes some other things come up, but it's CLIO.
Yeah, that's another one that you can actually create a map on and a digital footprint for your cemetery. Obviously, social storytelling, Facebook, Instagram, there's so many platforms out there now. You can do share resident spotlights. And that's kind of just, you can, once a week share one person that's in your cemetery and maybe tell a little bit about them. Do some research yourself and tell a little bit about who they are, where they were from, maybe a little bit about their life, if you know. QR codes are actually great. You can even make them on a printer and laminate them, and you can stick them on just little get like the 1x2s from Lowe's, and you can pound them in the ground and just staple or nail those QR codes throughout your cemetery, and you can link them to maybe little histories or maybe a history. If you have a cemetery that has different sections, maybe one's newer, one's older, you can tell a little bit about those different sections, or you can maybe put them next to different stones and you can tell a little bit about that person. Those are great because somebody, even just walking through your cemetery, most people have their phones on them. They can click on those QR codes and get a little bit of history. Um, and another way is local partnerships. Um, you think of, yes, you can partner with your county or your municipality or maybe a local history society, but there's also a lot of times genealogy groups, museums, local scouting groups. You can also sometimes partner with local funeral homes. I have done that on many occasions, especially when I'm trying to research people. Um, so these are just a few of the ways that are pretty low cost that you can start your marketing and outreach strategies for your cemeteries. Okay, now the big question. Securing grants and donations. Um, One of the first things that I put on here is your cemetery on or is it eligible for the um, and the NRHP is the National Register of Historic Places. That is what um, that goes through your state historic preservation office. And what that means basically is your cemetery, is it significant enough that it is eligible to be on that national register? Um, if it is not, if you don't know if it's on the national register, you can contact your state historic preservation office. They can tell you. Um, and And if it is not on the National Register, you find that it is not, you can contact someone. You can contact myself. Um, and there's other folks out there also. Sarah Ellswick, who's in this call. You can find out if it would be eligible either on its own for the National Register or as part of a historic district that may already be established. A lot of cemeteries, I will tell you, are not eligible because there are certain criteria that they have to meet in order to be eligible. And the reason that I'm going over this is because the historic preservation grants, which is the second one down on here, a lot of those require that cemeteries or buildings be either eligible for the National Register or be on the National Register in order to get those. So that's one of the first things that you want to find out. And that will help you also with other things once you determine if your cemetery is either on the National Register or if it's eligible. If it is not eligible, that doesn't mean that you still cannot, that there still isn't places that you cannot get funds. So, or, that you wouldn't be eligible to get funds. If it's not eligible, you can establish a Friends of group or which would be a 501c3 nonprofit arm of your cemetery to accept tax deductible donations. And that would allow you to accept donations from folks as a nonprofit. And if you establish a 501c3 for your cemetery, that would give people that are donating to your cemetery a more secure feeling that the money is going to be used properly rather than just writing a check to Jane Doe and saying, well, this money is going to go to the cemetery. If you have a 501c3 nonprofit friends group established for your cemetery and they write the check to that friends group, then they know that that money it will be used for the cemetery. Corporate sponsorships, you can partner with local funeral homes, local stonemasons, local landscapers, and other local businesses for sponsorship. I mean, it can go, even a local hardware store or a local construction business, any local business in your area may be able to give you donations or in-kind donations to help you with preserving your cemetery. You can also use crowdfunding and events like ticketed tours like we talked about earlier, and you can use digital campaigns for targeted restoration projects. This is also where having an established 501c3 nonprofit organization for your cemetery comes in handy, because if you do a digital campaign for targeted restoration projects and you have a 501c3 established, then the people that are donating on that digital campaign know where the money is going. Any questions, comments? Hang on one second. No, go ahead and forward it, Danielle. I'm going to step away for 1 second. I need to turn this air conditioner off. Sorry about that. It was getting noisy. Okay. All right. Next step's the launch. Okay. Before you do anything in a cemetery, and I mean anything, whether that's going to be to clean stones, cut the grass, whatever, even if it is your family cemetery, if it is not on your family's land, and if you don't know whose property it is, please find out who owns the cemetery and get their written permission for whatever you intend to do. Um, West Virginia state law backs you up on this. And if anybody's interested, um, send Danielle the state code. But you need to make sure that you have permission if you do not know or your family does not own the cemetery that you're going to be working in. And this is just, you want to make sure that, you know, you can't just go on somebody's property. Um, Even if it is your family cemetery, you still need to get there okay. Um, After that, um, you want to make sure you look around for safety and possibly any highlights that you could use in the cemetery. And if there's a cemetery board or if the city or town owns it, you want to have to get their permission for any events. And then you can launch a request for volunteers to help with a pilot event. And you can launch a low cost pilot tour if you want to test interest. These are just ideas. And then get feedback and then go after some funding. And remember the before picture that I had um, at the beginning of the presentation? Um, this is the after. Um, this is the after picture of that cemetery once we were done cleaning it up. And um, as I said, after cleaning it up, we located approximately 150 stones in this cemetery that were either buried or in the ground or unseen because of the waist high grass. Um, and we, after the workshop that I did, it was actually for the West Virginia Museum Association's conference, was the uh, first first workshop I ever did for cemetery preservation. Um, the following year, I went back and we had a um, the year that I did this, we had a invited the community to come up for a uh, cleanup, basically. Um, there wasn't a whole lot to clean up, but just basically to, you know, help pick up flowers and things like that. And I wanted to get some of the local community involved. And the there was several people that showed, but two of the people that showed were a two men, and one, they both had family in this cemetery. and they found out that they were cousins. Um, I'm sorry, not cousins. It was an uncle and a nephew. Um, and they had never met. Um, but because of what we did, um, they kept in touch. And a year later, when I came back to this cemetery, I was expecting it to be grown back up again and, um, you know, grass waist high again. But when I came back, there was an actually, because this cemetery's up on a top of a hill, as you can see. When I came back, there was a sign on the gate at the bottom of the hill saying for Mount Calvary, I think it was Mount Calvary Cemetery donations, please contact. And there was a name and a phone number on the gate. And I went up to the cemetery and it still looked like this. You can go ahead to the next slide, Danielle. I had not thought in a million years that um, it would be like this a year later. Um, but it seemed that the community had gotten involved and the cemetery is now being taken care of by the community. Um, and they're taking donations and upkeeping the cemetery. Um, so you never know. All it takes is one spark to light a fire. And apparently that's what this cemetery needed. Um, I want to thank everybody for coming. Our cemeteries are very important pieces of our history. And the more people we have preserving and participating in learning how to save them and how to properly care for them, the longer they'll be available for future generations. Please feel free to contact me with any questions that you have. I look forward to talking to everybody. You can go to the last slide, Danielle. Um, this is my contact information. Um, I am open by phone or by email. Um, and I not only do stuff like this, but I also do um, things. I do complete stone um, repairs and things like that. So, and I appreciate Danielle for hosting this.
Great. Well, thank you, Joni. If anyone wants to, yeah, ask any questions, I've seen some comments coming through, and um, we will be keeping in touch with folks once we select the cemeteries for the two workshops in the fall. So, well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll just hang around for a minute here in case anybody wants to chat or ask Joni any more questions.